everyone, welcome to the community hall. Zaylen decided to get kidnapped by his wife, so they've left me in charge again. Fools. I'm here with Zeb, Fox, Puka, and our guest, Fog.
I sound like
Uh,
this.
and Puka sounds like death warmed over or a frog crawled in his throat, one of the two.
Right.
But today we're going to actually discuss the tricky size of social constructs in games. This is from group size to guild size to any other MMO social organizations. And as this is our newest guest, Fog's baby, I'm going to let him start off this conversation. Let's get this going.
All right. One of the big things that we've seen in games today is that group sizes are shrinking. If you look at the games back in the late 90s, you would have like Dark Age of Camelot with 8 players. You'd have Warhammer Online with 6 players. Then you had Rift with 5 players. And you had, WoW has 5 and then goes up from there. Then you have games like ESO with 4 players. And now we're seeing new games proposed with 3 players. And that, in addition to the whole craze of Battle Royale and every man for themselves and, pulling away from the idea of needing other people to enjoy games and play games with, it's now turning into a less cooperative world and a more every man for themselves world. And I kind of thought it would be a nice topic to see what your opinions would be and see what your take is on why group sizes are shrinking so drastically.
Anyone want to field that?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to give what I believe, based off a lot of other topics we've talked about, one of the main things we've talked about is developers putting or spending development time on content that only 5% of their gaming community is ever able to experience, right? I mean, that was something that, we definitely experienced back with a lot of our old pre-WoW games. Even initially in WoW, a lot of content was like that, where it was pretty rare, like vanilla WoW, to be involved in Molten Core groups or, Onyxia and then Blackwing Lair when that stuff came out. Because you did have to get in a group of a lot of people, and I think a lot of these developers were basically like, hey, we put a lot of work into this content, and so few people are able to actually experience it. And I think what we've seen now is symptomatic of that. Basically, every dollar they spend on development, they want every person to be able to experience. It's just my take.
So, do you think that is an age range experience? Like, is that a new gamer versus old gamer experience, or is that a general game population idea? Though, I mean, are we moving towards as a general large scope game community? Are we looking for the quick fix? Are we looking for the that quick candy and trying to experience everything, or is that something that is more indicative of a younger generation of gamer?
Personally, I think it was a community problem. A lot of this content was developed so that if you were not part of a guild or a gaming community, you had no ability to ever experience it. Just frankly, that's the case. So ultimately, these developers were putting things into their game that was built around the assumption that groups of players were going to get together, large groups of players, beyond just group size. And they were going to schedule times of their day to set aside to actually accomplish some of these goals. And I think as the time has come on, I guess I say the fragility of some of these communities has caused developers to not lean on them as much as maybe they would in the past, because you can't gamble like 10% of your development budget on something that you can't necessarily trust, like communities being there, being present to rally players, and to get at some of this hardest content. And I think that's why we see things like Raid Finder coming in WoW. which was basically their way of, they were bridging the gap where communities were failing and being exclusive. Well, they took their content, they dumbed it down, and they made a group finder for it. And it's like, well, why do you need a community anymore? And that's essentially, that has kind of spread to a lot of other titles. I'm not a fan of it, but I think that's kind of the root of where it's coming from.
Well, I would say that even when you walk into the realm of like Dark Age or Camelot, we'll roll all the way back to Dark Age. We see game developers sometimes. What's the term now? Getting out of their lane. And when they put out Trials of Atlantis, that wasn't their lane. That wasn't what their game was, but they put it out and really shattered their own community with it. Because there's a belief, whether it be from a business model standpoint or just a desire to have your creation more accessible or whatever it is, to go, hey, that game over there has a lot of players. I want to be like it.
Yeah.
And
There's a
so
lot of that going on.
Trials of Atlantis was EverQuest for Dark Age of Camelot. That's the only way to really describe it was, hey, there's EverQuest people over there. Let's draw EverQuest people over here, not realizing you're going forward then and isolating your own community and making them hate you.
Well, the real problem was they broke a balance that had previously existed. And I don't think it's a nice tale there.
Hi, Tail.
Obviously, they were competing.
That's
in
our
an area,
fifth cat tail.
but
Or our
they,
sixth.
I warned you.
They-
You
they
can't
sh-
stream without him. It just doesn't happen.
I just think they stripped a lot of variety out, and Artifacts really, gosh, they just ruined it in so many ways.
But I would say that even before you got to the point where people were concerned that people were so laden with artifacts, I feel that there was a mass exodus out of Dark Age just to the fact that they had to go do 8 hours of raiding to do it.
That was one of the actual reason why I kind of started losing interest was Trials of Atlantis and that whole event. And if you ever talk to Mark Jacobs, he'll tell you the same. He didn't like it either.
Yep.
So, when the own developers didn't like the idea, what do you get? You get a bunch of content that pushes people away.
Well, especially since the content was so bugged that the GMs were trained to simply say, "Oh, sorry, we can't help you on this. This is a trial of adventure and exploration.
Yeah.
So you should figure it out."
Together.
The real answer was, it broke again. Trust me, I was actually a GM for a while on Dark Age of Camelot, and resetting trials all day long was a thing. So that's it gets very frustrating, especially when the engine is not designed to handle the level of complexity that Trials of Atlantis content was written in.
Yeah.
So the end result, though, is I feel that is part of the chase. I mean, you can see the evolution go from Dark Age of Camelot to the modern day, the most recent MMOs that have come out, and the reality is that combat is faster and faster paced. Everything is more instant. Everything is more 1 second. Everything is, you look at Dark Age of Camelot and a stun lasted for 9 seconds. A mez could last a minute and a half.
Yep.
Now you're lucky you get a crowd control that can last more than 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And I feel that is because of a bigger picture marketing idea. So, hands down, unless you're talking World of Warcraft, I think every other MMO, you just have to remove World of Warcraft because it's a lucky hit of magic, But every other MMO, none has made anywhere near the money that, like, say, the first 3 months of a Battlefield drop.
Yeah.
And because of that, they reach out and they go, well, what would attract the first-person shooter player to the MMO genre? And it's like, all right, let's make it faster paced. Let's make combat faster paced. Let's do this with faster pace. And so everything you see, to me, it's personal opinion, just feels like it's always based on the haves and the have-nots and the grassroots greener mentality. Those guys have lots of people. What can we modify our stuff to lure those people here? And I feel that sometimes the developer, and this is the one thing I'm excited with. We'll plug here to Mark Jacobs for Camelot Unchained, is that he's going to be the first MMO in a long, long time that just doesn't give a fuck and is going to be like, I'm going to be this little niche game and we're going to be an MMO. You know, those old school things that people used to play. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to try to be everything else. And I'm really excited about that aspect.
Yeah, I super appreciate that gamble, and especially in this market.
Yeah.
Zeb, wake up.
I'm awake.
Well, I mean,
but there's not much to add to what you guys are saying. The trend seems to be that the developers don't see social groups standing the test of time over game after game after game, so that they can develop content based around more players. The problem is that that there is people that develop. Each of you run guilds in excess of 100 people. So yours is 100 people. Shush.
Puga has like 6 max.
I have 6 max right now.
We got like 4 corgis and like
Those
a sack of potatoes.
corgis count, damn it.
Yeah.
they each have their own arcade.
That's right.
If we're counting corgis, Kissy alone brings like half my guild.
Oh,
But that's my point, is that I think that the developers have given up the assumption that players can withstand groups for longer than a certain amount of time period. So what they're developing is for the small groups of players that are friends from a long time, from childhood, from different games, and that that is what they think is will last. These 3-player groups that Fogg mentions, that is now going to be the standard for a few MMOs. That core group, that 3, 4, 5 person group, is what is the developers thinking is going to stick the test of time.
But again, are we giving developers in a way too much credit? Are they doing it because they have the metrics that say that is what will make a successful MMO? Or is that what they're doing to try to draw the masses from other game styles?
no,
I
see,
think
That's the real question.
Yeah, I think it's a second option. If you look at all the big box games like Overwatch, the Battlefield series, Fortnite, they're all either single player or running in a small group of like either you, a partner, or like there's 3 of you, right? You don't see groups of like 20 people running around, right? So,
And even then, if you are, you're a warm body in a mission, and you'll never see these people again. You know?
No, exactly. So I mean, and if those are the ones that compound for the majority of the actual multi-billion-dollar gaming industry, maybe they're trying to get a portion of that. Because even 1% is fucking, a lot of MMOs would wish for, right?
Right.
So it's, I don't know. I would say it's that they're just trying to get a bigger pocket of people. I mean, that's what I'm with the Dark Age, right? I mean, if you follow that, like that YouTube series, that How Games Died or whatever, a lot of games try to copy each other. Whatever's successful, they try to jump on because they want that player base. I want to go back up to 100,000 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers. Well, while I was toning into 1.2 million or so, right? So I think they all wanted that kind of the pie. Because at the end of the day, it's not a fucking charity. They want their money, right? They want to get paid so they can develop, so they can expand. So.
Well, and from a development side, MMOs are very, very high development cost. And because of that, they need, from a business standpoint, they need to go, they can't walk up to an investor and be like, I've innovated all this great stuff. This innovation, I'm sure, will bring in fans. No, they're like, show me on paper people who have the success of doing what you're going to do and copy that. and I want those numbers. That's why we had a decade of WoW clones. As soon as World of Warcraft came out, no one could get a dime if it wasn't a Xerox of World of Warcraft and its base core idea.
Right, because Silicon Valley was not going to invest in anything that wasn't successful before.
Right.
Well, I think something that's very evident is you can see now that when developers, you know, when something makes it onto your project board that you're working on that week, right, and it's a piece of content going in the game, there's definitely a question is, how am I leading players to this content? There is no longer a, like, all right, well, yeah, we just threw a random dragon out in the middle of an island or on this island in the middle of a lake, and we're not pointing anybody there. You know, maybe they'll wander onto it, and maybe like it one shots everybody, and you know, you got to get 80 people together to kill this thing. Like that type of completely dynamic, non-lore centric, not part of the theme park experience. It just exists in the world because it can. And maybe you find out something after defeating it about what pieces, like that stuff's just not there because that takes time, it takes effort. And if the majority of your players aren't going to experience it, I think a lot of development teams are just like, why? You know, we're nickel and diming ourselves already. Why are we going to put this content in there? And no one's going to really experience it. And I think they're really missing that. Those pieces of content are really the memory makers of your game. Like it's when we hop off the rails. It's when we like get out of the theme park, you know, we bust out the walls and we're like, and we're able to actually look in on the inner workings of this world that you made. That's awesome. And we're like, wow, somebody put this here and I found it and it's special. I've not read about this on any forum, not read this on Reddit. Like, and it's like, this is special. And it's awesome. And then you're able to share it. And then people work together to kind of break apart these little things. Like that's what makes even the most boring world interesting, because you didn't just say open up and like feed them the content, you know? And we don't see that.
Sears 421 touched on there is, yeah, you make all the content more accessible, but you also cheapen it so that it's non-memorable. It doesn't matter how awesome the fight was. If everyone can do it, it's cheap. It's lazy. It's, you know, people go, well, I now need to grind this so I can get the ring of whatever. Not, oh my God, we freaking beat Onyxia finally. After 4 months of beating our faces into this stupid dragon, we have finally succeeded, and we're one of the 5 guilds of the server that's done it.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually remember vividly when I was in high school when Onyxia came out, and I remember when the first guild killed it. I found out during school because that's what everyone was talking about, like how they do it, what the mechanic was. Or we haven't written about it yet. We're going to check the guild's website because back then, you know, fucking GeoCities is where he went to. So like that was the route, right? Now it's
yeah.
You know,
I think people have lost touch with the fact that, you know, it's the challenge and the hardness of content that actually creates those memories. Right. You know, when we first killed the Hibernian dragon in Dark Age of Camelot, we threw ourselves
the hardest dragon of all of them, by the way.
Okay, so we spent 2 whole years, you know, throwing ourselves at that every once a month. We'd just grab everyone in Hibernia and say, hey, let's go kill that green dragon. And we spent 2 years. And finally, the one way we did it was we kept the healers separate of everybody else. And we just said, no heals. Don't heal. Just res. Do nothing but res. And we just kept resing people. And they would come back. It's like a giant meat murder wagon.
You zombie rushed it. Great.
Yeah. It died. You know, it died. And we were the first on our server to kill it. And it was glorious. Everybody that was there would remember that. I mean, it's still one of my fondest memories.
Experience like that, burn indelibly. That's the heroin we're still chasing. That's today why we play is the heroin we're chasing. We're chasing that dragon. We want that fix of those memories and that intense moment, you know?
And, you know, the thing that I like to point out to a lot of my friends, a lot of the guys that I play with, is that when you have everything and you still have everything, they're not going to write a story about it. It's when you have nothing and you fought against all odds and then you overcome the challenge against you. That's when you really remember something and something becomes legend. Is, you know, you don't, I mean, King Arthur, you don't know that story because he was, a good king and was always a good king and is still a good king, and he never did anything. You don't hear about people that did nothing. You hear about
Oh no, a king that made a committee. Congrats! Like, I mean, that's really what it.
If you're going to go down in history, you got to overcome challenge, and the more challenges there, and the bigger, the darker the story that you come from, the better your story is going to be.
Right.
And I think games are just missing that mark.
Genghis Khan versus King Henry or whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever you want to put it up.
Yep.
No,
Bob the accountant does not win because he can grind real well. No one knows who Bob the accountant is.
Because there's too many Bobs. That's the whole point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
it's also-
definitely I feel that developers have got to be sent the message that all we're really after is a world, guys. Just set a world up, have some rules in it, make some items fun, and don't give us a guide. Like don't spell it out. Let us go in there and make mistakes and figure things out. The problem is, and this is exactly what Sear said. By writing the instructions, more people are willing to come. It's definite. Like when you are willing to spell it out for a person and help them. Like we've had games where people know the exact route, the exact path they're going to go, the exact way they're going to build their character before the game has launched. Like we have had game launches like that where people have already built their character, ready to go, and the game hadn't even launched. It's just we've extrapolated this data from 2 weeks in a beta, and it's like that game's not going to last.
But the reality is, people like us, people that are literally sitting in this room, are the people that do that. I get into an alpha or a beta. My job, literally as a community leader, is to rend all of that data as fast as I can
what I'm saying,
out of that thing to go blood, vomit to my children, little birds, and spit in their mouth.
But what I'm saying is,
crunchy goodness.
is the root of the problem is you were so easily able to get that data within 2 weeks' time or whatever. That's the problem. Like there's no depth. You were able to go through and almost experience everything and learn the math in such a simple amount of time, and that's not depth. That's it's just
you Dark Age players. We all remember waiting to the end of the week when Sonya was going to post the new thing that revealed some aspect of the combat system, and go,
something.
Like
Do that.
More numbers.
Yeah. So I'll ask this much though: how do you feel about the reverse aspect of? And I know we were kind of talking about this before we started, but where it seems that developers are kind of putting shackles on larger communities, where we've especially experienced this in Arcade, hopping into Arcade, 30-man guild caps, like even family caps of 10-man. Like, how do you feel about those? Where do you think the developer's coming from? Like, why this arbitrary cap that makes
because
no
they don't
sense?
trust the communities anymore, Puka. It's just
No, so the Arcade in specific. The reason
Arcade, I'm not talking about, but in general, the smaller game caps is because they don't trust the communities to withstand the test of time anymore.
I mean, I feel anytime there's a cap in anything, that cap is there to increase competition, right? Right? Like you put a cap on something, it forces other people like, all right, I can't put all my marbles here. We gotta spread out. But that really doesn't make sense from a community standpoint. Like we're just going to exploit the system and make other guilds. It's just difficult on us. But
basically, using Arcade as the example, though, is the player nation system is what broke their guild cap, because it used to be 300, now it's 50. Like, still to this day, I will argue till I'm blue in the face. I've had arguments with people over at City State even on this. Is alliances fix these problems too? Because you can have a pack of 8, 10, 15 little guilds who that's fine. they want to be little communities and they want to do their own thing. But when they need to band together to make that large event to go kill the dragon or whatever like that, they can still do it without being part of the 300-person guild. Yet allow the 300-person guild to exist.
Well, yeah, like that was happening in Eve. A bunch of small alliances got together and they fucking dominated. They carved out their area of the fucking map and they said, okay, you guys take this, you take this. But when we call you, you have to fucking come out and bring your fucking ships, right? So, I mean, Sears has a really good point, Sears 421, where he mentioned that large communities are getting pushed and game. I assume they're doing this because they ruined the game for smaller people, leading to smaller audiences. I do remember, at least in EverQuest and Ultima Online for a degree, that everyone was always afraid of these particular guilds that were, like the Minimaxers, the no-lifers, if you will, that were just, you see them on the map, you fucking run, right? Because like they would fucking just, plow. So I think that's what I got, you're saying, Malice, from ArcAge, that they were saying that some of these player-built communities were so strong that it just tilted the balance. If you were like a 30, 50-man guild and you saw them on the battlefield, you're like, nope, okay, we're going to go back to farming.
Everybody poured out. We're going to go find a continent usefully to be on.
But that's where I feel like the alliance system comes in, though.
Right, exactly.
It's absolutely 100% topples that. Like, if an alliance gets too big, that's fine. The other guilds that don't like you will form an alliance against you. If a single community or a single guild gets too big, that's fine. An alliance will come together. Like, people have opinions about the way things should be done. If they don't like the way you're doing something, they're going to naturally congregate together and try to change or try to oppose you. That's the beauty of this dynamic nature of community building. In my opinion, alliances are absolutely required. Like, for our community, we hit a game hard, I'm bringing 50 people in. That's it. Like that's what we got. And so we rely on alliances. I have to approach them. I'm like, this is what we bring to the table. Like, what can we work out? Like they are absolutely required for us to be a dominant force.
Yeah, it fixes the balance structure because let's be real, the 300, 500, 800, 1,000 player communities are happy to be self-sufficient entities. Yeah. If they have allies, a lot of their allies, and obviously this is not a complete statement, but like a lot of them, especially if they're very active, are into the idea that they are king. And they may have allies, but they're all subservient groups. They tend not to function as equals with smaller groups.
Let Fog answer that.
Well, there's a couple points. First of all, I want to kind of rewind a little bit about games. Like, they got this perception that big guilds kill games. And my answer to that is, well, World of Warcraft doesn't seem to be hurting. And their guild system's 1,000 people. EVE Online doesn't seem to be hurting. And they're 11,000 people. The most successful games ever made have big guild systems. The games that are here today, gone tomorrow, those guys are the ones with small guild systems. Like EverQuest doesn't have EverQuest 1 and 2. They're still online. They don't have guild limits.
Right. 2 points, and this was actually something I was going to bring up before. World of Warcraft is primarily a PvE only game, and the PvP content is hyper limited. It's structured, so it's always under control. The second is EVE, which is something I was about to relate to ArcAge and a lot of the modern games, is that, and we've talked about this in a previous show, is that the game sizes have gotten smaller. And not that there's less square feet of game space, but the fact that we give instant teleports to everywhere and super travel and all this other stuff like that, the world is so small that large forces are vastly impactful because they can dominate everywhere simultaneously. Whereas in EVE, travel is so epically takes forever to get somewhere that I could be 10 million people, but if I'm crammed in this corner of the freaking galaxy and I need to go to that corner of the galaxy, I could still probably hang out for a day over there and be like, whatever. I mean,
And that's one of the things. That's one of the points I've made to the Guild Wars 2 communities. They keep making travel faster in World. And the fact of the matter is, if you're running a small force against a large force, time is of the essence.
Right.
You have to go faster than the Zerg can go. And when you're giving the Zerg the weapons to instantly teleport and be there, basically the little guy has no chance.
Right.
You know? And if you're in a world like Elder Scrolls Online, if you're a small force and you can hit a target and move, you can outrun a Zerg. You know, but when you're in a closed environment and the Zerg is on you in less than a minute, you can't take a castle or do anything in a minute. You're not going to, 5 people are not going to stand up against 100. That's just not going to happen. And, early days of ESO aside. But that's just kind of the thing that we're seeing is that they're just making travel so fast and so easy and so accessible that there's no cost to it. I mean, hell, in World of Warcraft, when you die, you have to take the walk of shame back to your corpse. It's, travel was a thing back then, and it wasn't something that was instantly there.
Yeah,
So.
but it was also predicated on the fact that you had a reason you were going somewhere.
Yep.
Right.
And like the big issue of Guild Wars 2 was there was no reason to split up. Why would I? I can respond to any point on the map in 2 minutes. And you cannot get through the outer sand enters and kill the keep lord on my faraway keep before I can get there. And the point is, if I got everybody on me and I get there and we're defending, we're going to win. And it's just like, gosh, it's so ridiculous that you can't break large groups apart. And that was one of the biggest things in Dark Age. Is like, all right, if they won't split up, that's fine. We'll divide. Somebody's going to get sacrificed, but we'll gain 2 objectives out of it every time.
Yep.
Every time if they don't split up. And then you force them to split up and you force them to test the individual leaders within that large group against your individual leaders. And if they can't do that, they fail. But the point is that was very representative of a lot of groups is they did not have the ability to split up. And they would just take their whole group and it was like, whatever, that's fine. We lose 1 objective to them, so we gain 2. And it didn't work for them. But in a game like Guild Wars 2, it works every time. You can't do anything because they'll respond to you before you're ever able to take any objective of importance.
Right.
And it killed it.
I ran basically we were a 10-man guild in Guild Wars 2. When we'd hit PvP, we were about a 10-man guild. And we would take camps, and then once they put that objective in the center with the 5 nodes in the very middle, we would control that on any given map. But outside of that, like, Zergs just showed up instantly at keeps. You couldn't go near them, and then if you wanted to get involved in keeps, you had to go join the big raid, and therefore you lost your ability to kind of enjoy your small man gameplay. And I actually sat on with one of the producers from Guild Wars 2, and I was like, hey, here are some cool ideas that would allow us to do more interesting stuff with. I didn't want to change how the Zergs fought keeps, but I wanted to change how small man players could interact with, or even break off groups from Zergs could interact with camps. And I was like, allow us to build them up more effectively, allow them to build kind of structures, walls, kind of give us funnel points, allow us to control the environment against larger forces so that we can at least hold our ground for a while. And we were pretty much told that their mission objective, that what that was written by all on high and they all had to play along with, was that it was a group Zerg game. It was the intent of the game to be in a Zerg, and anything else was uncivilized. So I mean, that just shows you that sometimes they're just not even willing to evolve to the desires of multiple play styles. They pick their play style and they run with it.
Well, I mean, and that's definitely been made evident based off the change that has happened on those maps. I mean, the maps are just atrociously tiny. And I remember a time, there was a time of back when we were doing world completion on those maps, where the maps felt big. But it's the reality is man, these are some tiny maps. There was a time they felt big, but but they really are absurdly small. And then you go back to, you know, the frontiers of Dayak, and it's like, wow, that was a big map. I mean, it was a 15-minute run to
We're
get
doing a
out your
relic
border.
raid, guys. Everybody stack up on me. All auto follow me. There are now 200 people running a chain, running through a map. 20 minutes later, we're gonna get to where we're going.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's with song buffs and everything else, making sure that everybody's moving at top speed. You know, like now all of a sudden it's like poof, there I'm there.
Yeah, and that wasn't. I guess they're in their mind. They're like, well, that was the boring part, and it's like, maybe, but it was necessary. It was necessary because there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of misinformation during that travel. You didn't necessarily know what was going on, and you just kind of had to figure things out when you got there.
And scouts were important.
Scouts were very important,
Yeah.
and I love
There
the
was
fact
something
that
for the
you
solo
could.
player or the small group. There was always something to do for the onesie twosies.
And I
you know?
loved being able to lean on like NPC scouts in your claimed keeps. Like that was so big, where it's like, listen, you know, 40 enemies in the area. You're like, all right, stop farming. Like everyone out. We gotta go.
Yep.
We gotta go. You know, because you'd see like, all right, 3 guys in the area. You're like, whatever. They're running through. 10 guys
And
in the
also, who's
area.
yelling?
Okay.
All
something's going on.
call, all call.
And
And
you're like, yeah,
acting
75
for
guys in the
rally.
area. You're like, oh god. You're in alliance chat. Like, come on, man.
Alarm clock raids, man.
Yeah, oh yeah. Something we were talking about in the MMO grind, and we touched on it briefly, but I'd like to kind of relate it here is the idea of like things like magic and ritual magic and those types of things. I would like to see those things used as mass travel. I think it would be really cool if it was a very expensive 300 gold ritual to open this big gate to go somewhere.
Yes.
Like, all right, let's get the raid to do this, and we have all the resources, we've got the right things, and it took us a week to grind all the widgets and the herbs and the everything else, and we cast the giant ritual and womp.
Sounds expensive. I'm
Crap,
walking.
they just jumped in on that keep. Oh god. Like, I mean,
I'm walking.
that would be epic.
That's expensive. We can buy cloaks with that. You know,
Right.
Good idea.
That's what I'm saying.
ain't trying to
Like,
waste nobody on no fancy portals. We got
Right,
feet.
right.
Pat and Charlie get me there.
but that's the thing is, if you want to move large raids, make it epic, make it cost, make it worth walking into, as opposed to currently, which is, all right, hold on, we gotta go, blah blah blah, boom, and then a portal opens or whatever, and everybody just goes to wherever.
Make it worth talking about for the player base, because
Right.
the player base can incorporate that into their stories as well. We saved for a week, we saved for a month, we did all the widgets and all the stuff, and then finally we jumped on that keep and they didn't know what was coming. So make it part of the story.
Well, and then it becomes a what you would call the cost of doing business for being a large guild. Well, you'll end up, your 500,000 player guilds, they can afford to do that because they have the warm bodies and the organization usually to do all those things. The little guilds aren't going to maybe accomplish it, but they're going to reap the rewards of it and the actions of the big guilds. Therefore, they become symbiotic to each other. The 300-person guild still needs the faction to win the battle, but they also have the resources to open the big portal to get them there. You know, and so everyone like works together in the grander scope.
I would summarize it by saying this. You know, I think epic experiences should be gained through epic sacrifice. So if your guild is willing to make like an epic sacrifice of monetary donation, that warrants you guys the potential for an awesome epic experience. You know, one time. Now this is all in-game stuff, right? Like I ain't talking about, hey there guys, I got these cash shop items. We're ready to go. I made all these donations for cash shop. Thanks for the patron. We bought a whole bunch of stuff. We're gonna spend 40 grand this weekend. Y'all gotta come out.
I have dual-wielding credit cards. Let's do this.
I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about a sacrifice of your game time on the part of your players. that sacrifices their playtime should be
Yeah.
able to relate to some awesome experiences.
Yeah.
And these could be things like, something that a guild might only be able to fire off once or twice a year. People show up for that stuff. Especially if it's guaranteed to have some epic followings after the fact. Like that's some of that stuff is really cool.
Anything that you can put into a game that causes people to work together towards a goal really helps keep the community involved. Every game that we've done, we've always kind of, sometimes we've had to make it up. Like in Rift, we had this whole thing with Asha Katari. So there's an NPC that lives inside the Defiant capital city. So everything in there turns to PvP. And then there's a raid boss in the middle of that city where every player basically hangs out at. So we came up with the idea of trying to assassinate that said leader, which supposedly was unkillable, but we proved that false. But it took months of planning, months of trying it. We tested at different hours of the day, see when we can get in there without as many Defiants knowing. And when could we do it? And we finally did it after like 9 months of trying. We finally put her down, and it was something fun. But that whole everyone working together, let's get the gear that we need to do this. We had to have like a whole raid, like we had like 2 or 3 raids of people that were all geared PvE, and then we had 2 or 3 raids of people that were geared for PvP that were meant to fight off the Defiant that were trying to kill us. But we all had to come together and work together to make that idea happen. And anything that a game could do that really kind of motivates people to work together towards a bigger cause creates a memorable experience. Nobody that was there is going to forget about that night that we killed Asha. Nobody.
Exactly.
I mean, even the Defiant players were like, "Oh my god, that was amazing!"
Yeah.
Now with the current state of Rift, you can walk in there and do it yourself. But
But
back then, man, that was the experience of experiences.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
that was not something that
representative
you saw.
of developers being willing to take the risk of putting something in their game that nobody can benefit from. They're like, this guy's here, nobody can kill him. Like they're
Right.
not going to kill him. But the point is, like they knew, there was a point where people could potentially come together and do it. And that exists, and you guys were able to do that. But there was no instruction manual on that. There was no raid guide. That
Right.
was
Yeah.
just figuring it out. Like those are epic moments. Like that's why we play MMOs.
And thank you, Panda Soda, for the follow.
Nice. To what Falkland was saying, I remember in Ultima Online way back when one of the developers would actually log on to like the Lord Britain or Lord Britannia character and make his like public announcements, and he was supposed to be unkillable, and the guards would, if you attack someone, the guards would spawn instantly and like one shot you, and he was still managed to get assassinated. I mean, it took several. I mean, I think 3 or 4 public kind of speakings before somebody actually coordinated enough that enough people attacked at the same time. And they fucking killed him. And I remember that to this day. And that was 20 years ago.
I never even played Ultima Online, and I heard about that.
Yeah. So, I mean,
that is why those things are memorable right there.
Right.
What Fog just said. Like, I played about 5 minutes of EVE and said, this is the most boring spreadsheet I've ever looked at, and quit immediately. It was like, no, I am not going to spend the next 7 months just to become viable enough to enjoy playing this game. That being said, I can tell you all about the Battle of the Goon Swarm and Bob falling and all of that stuff like that. Why? Because it's so memorable that it has impacted the gamer world in general.
It's like because I read a Vice article on it. Like that stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, there's several game sites made articles on it. Yeah.
Yeah, like a mainstream news outlet was covering this. Like, players are doing $21 billion of espionage. Like, what the crap? Like, that stuff is amazing.
And then, like, flash forward to today, where I have to, like, in ArcAge, every 15 minutes, like, your hero calls upon you. Your hero calls upon you. And fucking nothing's happening. You fucking even give the option to ignore that message. Like, it kind of bears no relevance whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
I see people in nation chat screaming, like, we need more to defend the castle. We need more to defend the castle. Where is everyone? And everyone's like, I'm fucking farming. I don't give a shit. It's not going to be, it's not going to be memorable.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I could tell you memorable stories early ArcAge. We as a guild, we're actually a mercenary guild, and the way that the castles used to work is they would basically have a attack force, and then they could get reinforced like 45 minutes later or whatever. And that reinforcement forces, actually came in. My guild came in. We got paid to show up and be the reinforcement force, and proceeded to go up against the other guild and just shift the whole entire balance of power and just start crushing the highest gear score guy in the game on repeat. Like, and he would stand out there, hi sorcerer, you know that guy who's currently making Ashes of Creation? Yeah. I remember you standing out there in the field with your double credit card swipe gear and your 5 healers keeping you up, and we still murdered you on repeat.
Oh god, he's got
But that's the those are memorable moments. Those are when it's freaking awesome and epic and cool. Now it's like they just vanillaed it out, so it's like whatever.
But, and that's why I'm excited for Camelot Unchained, because if to, let's say, build a grand castle, like a city state or whatever, like in the game or whatever, the amount of resources that I hope that they'll require the faction to be able to put together, that when that thing gets, if you help with your alts to make that, to grind the wood, to grind the stone, to grind the ore, to make that, and then you hear it's being attacked, you're like, fuck that shit. It'll give you a reason to actually go there. Like when our castle's being attacked, I don't give a flying fucking Arcade. It's like, okay, well, just get another one, in 2 days. Just to spawn, or our hero deleted it. Okay, whatever. In 2 days, we'll try it again. There's no dust off my back.
That's what's going to be beautiful about the fact that it's not like, okay, you took a castle, it just fixes itself. Like, no, you took a castle, all the pieces of damage you dealt getting in there, you better fix it, son. It's not going to magically fix itself. Get to work. That level of investment, that has been the biggest thing. Period. Like, I wish something like that would at least translate over to Guild Wars 2. Like, we take a castle, that's great. Go fix the walls. Like, everything just flips and it's brand new. Like, no, go fix it.
So this is something in general content that I feel that also needs to be kind of addressed in the MMO sphere. It's something that old games did. Asheron's Call, I believe EverQuest, a couple other old school games did it. Sure, and like WoW does it sort of, where you get we're the server first or whatever like that. But like, we actually got in Asheron's Call, we actually got gear for being the first group to actually defeat a dungeon. And that gear was not even good stats or anything, but it was like a dragon helm with a dragon staff and stuff like that. And no one else could have those items in game. They were not particularly exciting. They were worth just walking around town with, but they were just to show off. Hi, I was the guy. I was in that group. We were the first dudes to beat that. Screw you. Haha. And that's awesome. It doesn't need to be good stats. It literally needs to just be.
Well, it tells a story.
Let me put my nuts on your nose and laugh at you.
It doesn't exactly have to tell that story.
Yeah, but it's true. People want to flaunt their ego.
I think that's your story. That's what you share.
It's whatever.
It's the nut press. That's Malice's story. The teabag.
Yep. But that's the thing is, like, people want to have that epic moment. And honestly, that jealousy of people who didn't achieve those things honestly I've never seen that cause people to quit. I've seen that to motivate players to do other things.
Yeah. It drives players to be like, all right, well, I want to get serious about this. How can I be a part of a community that's going to push that next content drop,
So, I guess we've really touched on the ideas and scale, like guilds and even kind of raid sizes and things like that. But what do we think of the actual group size? I think that's something we've kind of dodged around. Is the actual sizes of groups.
I think at first we need to define what is group content versus what is raid content, because that'll help us figure out how many people.
Well, most of these games have a simple mechanic. What is a group? It is usually 5 people. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 8. But it is I can hit party in an Arcade, and it makes a party. There can only be 5 people in it. I can make a raid, and we can put 50, 100 people in it or whatever. But
Traditionally, I kind of like the 5-man parties. Makes math easy. You know, when you're looking at multiple group like
Especially
raids and
when
whatnot, it's
translating
easy.
raids.
Right. It's easy to do the math on how many what group needs to go where. When you start doing like 6 or 7 or 8, 8 was fun in Dark Ages, but it was kind of confusing at times. Like when you were working with multiple battle groups and trying to figure out how many people are in your battle group, it really came down to a math game, and you got good at math. With 5, it's super easy.
It's always a math equation. How many classes versus how many races, and then you mix that together to see what is the optimal amount of groups you have.
I see that's in. So I did when Classic servers came out after I had fled the game from Trials of Atlantis. I came back when the Classic servers launched. We actually came back as an 8-man gank guild. Let's say from the scope of 8-man, the thing that I like of a larger group size over 5 is basically a commitment to the most basic model of dungeon group. It is 2 healers, 1 tank, 2 DPS.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the healers is a half DPS, half healer,
3 deep,
like an
son.
off healer or whatever like
Put
that.
that on
or
one healer's shoulder.
or if you have or if you have a fantastic healer, you might rotate one in and get another DPS or something like that. Great, but it's a really simple model. The things I liked and what I hope Camelot Unchained does, and what I really enjoyed in Dark Age of Camelot, was the fact that other than 2 healers, everything else was depth. There was interesting roles. So you had, I'll use Midgard as my example. We had 2 healers with 1 shaman. Shaman's job wasn't a healer; he was to disease and slow people down. You had a caster; his job was to blind targets and make sure that their healers couldn't produce as well. They had a tank. They had you had a Mezzer. You usually had a speedster who was also like either your Mezzer, or you might have if you were Albion, you just had a sorcerer who was your Mezzer. You had tank, you had melee DPS, you had a range guy. You could make some other builds and stuff like that, but there was so much depth in how you could build those groups out and what you could do with them that, like, to me, it was like kind of that magic. Like you said, it was confusing, but in a way, it was also massive depth.
Yeah,
where
because when you got it to work, when you had the right ingredients for that group and it worked well, and everyone was like buzzing off each other's synergy, it was fantastic. It worked. You did not want to log off that night because you're like, no, I can't log off now, Mom, Dad, because I'm in a group and we're kicking ass. I don't want to stop, right? So to add on what you're saying, I think what makes Dark Age that group size work, because you had so many depth of classes. You had multiple classes you could be, and a wide spray of different assortment of things you could be. Like, I hated in Elder Scrolls Online how there were so few classes, like true classes. And then to do a dungeon in a PvE dungeon, it was 4. You had, your 2 DPS, your healer, and your tank. And that was it. It's like, well, what if the people that are online in my community are all healers? Like in other previous games, sometimes we were all healers and we would still do a dungeon. They can never kill us. The boss will take forever to kill, but we can fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, in other games, we had that option to kind of mix around. And I remember Dark Age, we ran with whatever we could possibly get. And sometimes it was like, we had 3 vampires and a fucking bard. But we made it work, right? Because, and that's all that was online. So I think the group size also depends largely on what options you have, right? If CU has if they actually come up with 11 classes, I think they would need to have group sizes of 6 people or greater, because imagine trying to do it in 4. What do you take? Do you take like a Fiona as your tank and then like 1 healer and 2 mages? Well, then you have no scout. Then you have no crowd control. You have no ranger. You have no artillery. You know what I mean? Like, or like if you have, let's say like 8 people in EverQuest, or not EverQuest, let's say ESO Online, Elder Scrolls, then like, well, what do you take? And then like, what, you take 4, shaman stamina builds, and you take, you take your Shadow Knight, whatever the tank class was. I mean, it wouldn't feel right because you have too many people doing the exact same role. So,
but the thing is like all of a sudden you could find the viability of the elemental build Dragon Knight.
mhm.
Whereas otherwise he's just going to go hard DPS or hard tank. So you can find that middle ground support build and things like that would, in a larger group size, would be viable. But they're not viable because since you're limited, there's better things per slot. But if there was a larger scope, then that would be additive as opposed to a replacement.
Well, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think the solution is to just have an in between. Like, I think the 5-man group is perfect. It's been time tested. I don't think there's a problem with it. That said, I also don't see the option between bridging the gap between groups and raids with something with just a completely different name. You can have something called like a squad, which is 10 people, and hard cap it at that and be like, listen, don't even make that like 2 groups merging with 2 leaders. Be like, yeah, well, we'll turn into a squad, and now we're open to 10 people, and maybe there's some type of limit as far as like what content we can do and everyone get credit in a squad. It needs to be pretty minimal. But the point is, it's like, just create a middle ground and be like, all right, if we need raid content, then that's raid is like, that's when you got to get 30 plus or 50 people together. Let's call that a raid. But if we can have 10 people, what can't we do? That's enough moving pieces for plenty of variety. And just call it something, not a group. But because I think people still want their 5-man groups. And I don't think they want to see that go. And they definitely don't want to feel weak because they built around a solid 5-man team. But just create another piece that's a little bit bigger. And I think
But
that's
that's
the best
also, I feel
solution.
the value of doing something like a raid. Not a raid, like an alliance, is that this is what we did as an 8-man guild. Was we created an 8-man guild alliance so that there was always floating people, and if you were 7 people, you could be like, hey, looking for a healer. And some guy's like, oh, my guild's not running tonight. I can heal for you. Cool. And you knew those people were good because they were in 8-man guilds themselves.
Yeah, and that's where, like, if we had, like, 10-man squads running around and potentially you have someone orchestrating all these squads, you can ask to be like, hey, someone logs in, a healer logs in, it's like, hey, put me where I need to be. And, and if you have someone that's over an entire alliance of guilds, maybe one guild's running 3 squads, one guild's running only 1 squad, whatever. The point is you can move that piece where it's needed. If you want to prioritize them with their guild and their guild has a need, that's fine. But if not, move them into another potential squad that's working on something else. And now you've got a whole bunch of little effective pieces where it's like they're not 5-man groups that can't do anything, but they're 10-man squads where each squad can have a scout. Each squad can have 2 healers. Each squad can have 2 tanks. And then there's a lot of other specialty type DPS roles in between that the squad can be built around. Because now I've got 5 people that are purely objective based. Like, what can these 5 DPS roles really specialize around? And you can focus and synergize the squad around something like that. And they still have enough dynamic roles like healers and tanks and eyes to react to any force that hits them. And if you have, you're orchestrating 10 of those guys around on a field, like, that's a fun night. You know what I mean?
Sears 421, I'm totally with you. The fact that right now in ArcAge we are locked down to pretty much 4 to 6 hours of daily grind is mentally just deficient.
It's terrible.
The idea of that's the only way to further my character is stupid. Whereas I want to be called to do a daily grind of going, there is a horrible thing going on, and everyone go do it.
But that's what Vanilla ArcAge was, and it's just that's not what we got. We used to make our content, and now our content's being made for us. And the point is, we don't have another choice because the content that's been made for us is the most rewarding, and we're being forced into it by reward. I can't get some of the things I need without doing these brain dead dailies. and it's no fun. That's not what Arcade was. I used to be able to make my own fun.
But sadly, the reality is that everybody wants content. You look at any form of any MMO that's ever existed.
See, I don't think that's
people
true.
people want content. They do. They really want content. And the thing is the laziest content you can make in a game is dailies. I'm not saying that's what people want. I'm saying people want content. They don't want dailies. They want content. But people's game companies' response, because let's be real, most MMOs hire 300 people on, fire 95% of their staff, and are running on 8 dudes in a basement now. And so they've left those 8 dudes to have to come up with content. And now all of a sudden they're like,
No,
daily.
see, that's where I don't think it's true. I don't think players want content. Again, I played Vanilla Arcade. There wasn't content, but I had people in my guild who were accomplishing
I want
goals.
new dungeons. I want new dungeons.
No, I hate dungeons. I don't want to run dungeons. No, it's atrocious. The point is, I got people trying to accomplish things. I want to help them. That's my content. Like, they have goals. They're like, we need to do X, Y, Z. We're trying to make some money. Like, that's great. These forces are going to try to stop us. I want the forces to be other players, and I want my content to be how do I beat them so that my people can accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
Like that is content. And it's
Yeah,
content that never repeats. They'll never hit
Right.
the same spot. They'll never hit the same way. Like, that is the repetitive.
Well, they need to fix the trade system, do all those types of things to create the
Correct.
organic
Like, I can't
feel
even-
again.
There's no point.
Of pulling
I can
players.
load packs up and run them right now. No one's going to stop me because I'm an idiot
Right.
for making a pack in the first place. Because
Right.
it was a waste of money the second I made it. I'm not
Yep.
making profit. And it's like, fix that, and then you'll have all the content you need. The second people are rolling the dice and they're like, you know what, maybe I will load my merchant ship up by myself and go try to run. And you're like, well, you're an idiot. Now I got it. Now it's my merchant ship. And, and the next thing they know, they call their buddies and they're like, hey, he's driving it out into the ocean. He's about to destroy it. That's content. Like, that's content right there. And you didn't make it. You just changed the rules. You made it dynamic. You made us do. We always look for the easiest route. And if we have player obstacles along the way, like, that's all the content we need.
And, I mean, Eve did that, and I think
that style of gaming. Go ahead, Fox.
Well, I was going to say, like, I remember when I played Eve, and I played Under Test, is that our content was sometimes, like, if it was midweek content, was trying to, go look for miners. Miners are hiding in deep sec, trying to mind their own business, trying to, get their things. So, well, hey, fuck, if I can get at least 1 or 2 of those, I could make, like a weekend's worth of fucking grinding and killing other people, right? And that was the content. We would, 3 or 4 of us would get up, we'd spec out our ships, and we'd go looking. And a lot of nights we came up with nothing. But when we did, oh, fuck, it was fun. Oh, God.
Yeah. And you got those miners sitting there always looking over their shoulder. Like, crap. Because you can't just sit back and be like, I'm safe. I'm good to go. You can't do it because you're not safe. Because people like you are out there looking to make a quick buck. And it's like, that's what makes it fun, is that fear of at any moment, I'm driving my dumb trade ship by myself or I'm mining by myself. It's like, I'm very exposed. This is the best risk to reward ratio, right? Where it's like, this is 100% risk. But if I get it, I get all the cheddar for myself. I'm not paying anybody for escort. I get all my money. And that's like that's the biggest gamble ever. And that's what people really like.
But that takes a lot more planning up front in the beginning stages than a lot of developers are willing to do at the moment.
No, I don't think it takes any planning.
No,
That's the
it
point.
does. It does. It takes a strong economy. It takes a flexible guild system. It takes a lot of planning, a lot more planning than I think is obvious right off the bat.
Well, again, looking at Arcades, they had it, and then they took it away. They took it away because in their minds, they were like, well, if we force these trade routes, players will stay on them. But it's like, no, players that did it because you gave them an easy way of getting it for free. And it was like, that's all we need is let's do it once a day for free. And it takes 45 minutes to run one pack, but they would do it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, let's be real. So this is once again that scope of a company not talking to other companies and the larger game corporations communities not fully understanding the game community, because they were desperate to try to keep players from bleeding. Unfortunately, ArcAge also runs into the problem of you go from the Tryon era and now you move into Gamingo. And honestly, for Gamingo is doing all these horrible bugs. They're screwing things up in many ways. But on a positive note, XL Games and Gamingo are at least pushing in the right direction and fixing the problem that actually was driving players from the game, as opposed to the perceived idea, which was, oh, players just want to do safe routes and do this, that. No, that's not what they wanted to do. And the few that did because there were safe routes that just weren't as profitable. But there was big profit in doing high risk, high reward actions. And there was a whole group of players that enjoyed playing like that.
Even Camelot Unchained. Even Camelot Unchained, we have got to be able to have high risk, high reward. I know where the good ore is. I know where the good wood is. You have got to be willing to let me to go out there, bring my wagons out there by myself. I'm going to go in a mine. I'm going to fill my wagon up. I'm going to take it. No guards. And you know what? If no players come and they don't find me, whatever.
Cha-ching.
I got that cha-ching, right? But you be an
I'm making
idiot.
triple what I should have made if I
Yeah.
had some players and bought
But
guards
the
and had a
point
better
is,
wagon.
there needs
or
to be
whatever.
a way for those other players to be like, oh yeah, well, let's go check on that mine, see if there's some dum-dum down there by himself. Right? The point is, if you got 5 people running around, be like, well, let's go check on this mine. That's content. They go down there, they don't have mining equipment, whatever. They don't mine. But they go down there, somebody's already put the work in, mine stuff, filled a wagon. My wagon now.
Yeah, and the things I remember on Ultima Online, the vanilla Ultima Online, that there was a system like that too, where one of our neighbors was rich. He just kept getting more and more money. And we're like, he plays the same amount as us, from our group, our guild or whatever. He's around the same amount of time. At the time it was maybe 6 hours a day or whatever. But how is he making so much money? So we wasn't a million point, it was one of my friends, followed him, went into the lockdown, followed him to see where the fuck is he going to get to make his money, right? And it was one of those things where you're creating your own content. What's his secret, right? Let's make a data that to spy on him to see what he's doing differently than we're doing to make the money to get his fucking castle, months before we were able to get our castle, or I think it was the tower at the time. We're how the fuck did he get a tower so quick? What is he doing? Where's he going? Where's he mining? Oh, he's going there because there's no PKs there? Well, fuck, let's give that information to the PK guys that we don't like us to fucking, get them off our back. And hey, this guy over here is making a lot more money by himself because he's going over here because you guys aren't patrolling over there. Fuck, oh, sure, no problem. Fuck, just get off our back. That was fucking free content right there.
Yep.
Yeah, smuggling, and smuggling is such an important, that's what I did in ArcAge. I'd ride my ship out to some random patch of land in the middle of the ocean, drop a whole trade ship over the packs on this island, and be like, ain't nobody coming here, and then move them in, one at a time. You kill me? Oh, I lost one. I'll be smarter next time. Sometimes I'll leave them there for 2 days. It doesn't matter. I'll get them there eventually. No one's going to find them. They're hidden in some random bush.
Yeah.
You're not driving by that island in the first place. Smuggling is an important part of gameplay, and people need to be able to do it. Alternatively, hired hands and brute force, running of any cargo or any goods or supplies, needs to also be an applicable part of gameplay.
It's the one thing that Star Citizen creates a presentation of, but I don't feel that it'll ever really be.
Well, we'll see.
I could be wrong. Is the idea of the depth of action that they've specifically put out a ship that's supposed to be this data runner, and I'm that would be the greatest job ever. Is I'm just gonna zip in this little data ship and just cruise data and sell data and wheel and deal data. That'd be freaking awesome. Do I think it's gonna end up becoming a viable system in that game? Probably not. But the idea that it could exist and the idea that that is what the content they should be focusing on is what makes it exciting. That being said, I think we should, we've kind of slightly derailed, and we should.
That's what happens when you mention dailies on ArcAge. We just fucking get dumped in.
But Fog, so what's so we've talked about guild groups, a little bit about I would almost say raid guild size. What else do you think is one of the root causes of a lot of this shrinkage?
I think if people
Whole lot
are
of-
just starting to think more about, like, we're becoming selfish as a society. I mean, if you look at it back in our parents' generation, you had like World magazine, and then you had People magazine, and now we have Us magazine or Self magazine. It just, everything's kind of slid to thinking about oneself instead of the community as a whole. And I think that we're all missing out on the fun and the joy of, hey guys, guess what? We have this amazing piece of technology that puts you in the same room as people who knows where. I know I got at least one Canadian here, right? Right? And
Say you're sorry.
I play games with people that are over in Finland and South Africa and Argentina, and I'm able to communicate with these people as if they were in the same room with me. My parents
Right.
would never even dream of that.
Right.
You know? So this allows us to say, I don't care if you're from another country or from another race or another gender or whatever have you. You can be my brother and sister, and we can go into this fight and go have a wonderful time and enjoy these great memories as if we were in the same room together. And that's something that's really powerful. And I think MMOs are really losing sight of that, is that the community can be the reason you play a game, not the shiny bells and whistles you throw out there. You can play a game because you love the people that are playing that game.
But,
Well,
but I
it's
think
it's
the
telling
question
you.
I want answered. Sorry, I hate to cut you off, Seb, but and I'll let you answer it right after this. Is which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are we talking about? Are we playing selfish because the content is designed to be selfish, or are we? Is content selfish because we've become selfish? Zeb, do you have
I have a sort of an answer to that. It's not selfish; it's self-aggrandizing. We want all the stories that we've told on this show are about how we have together collectively, but we tell the story individually. We don't tell it with the people that happen there. So what that leads to is other people wanting their own stories, but the difficulty in achieving that is hard. First, you have to have the designers design unique content for people to achieve once or very rarely. Second, you have to have a group to play with, and that's becoming a more rare thing. A lot more lone wolves than there are group players now. So that's why you have the things like Raid Finder and all these type of things, because the group content is designed secondly. The experience is what's being designed first.
And I think what we will all agree on is when I say the best games we played from a community standpoint, if you were to log in and play them by yourself, were hot garbage. Just think about them. Like the games we know and love had hot garbage content. Like that's what made them beautiful, was that we were able to play them together. We made them fun. Those games objectively as single player experiences were terrible. I could take World of Warcraft, play through that, never encounter another character, and that's pretty on par with the World of Warcraft experience, leveling up. Like that's the experience. They don't want me. It's that ride. They're giving me a cinematic experience. They're giving me a quest experience. It's like an RPG, but it's such a shell of an RPG. The point is these MMOs were meant originally to be designed as simply worlds that forced us at some point to start to work together, and we moved the opposite direction where they're trying to sell an RPG experience that is very cinematic, that competes with a single player RPG, but I can play with my friends. And the point is, I don't want that, right? Like if I want an awesome RPG experience, I'm going to go play freaking Skyrim. I'm going to go play the Baldur's Gate series. Like there are amazing RPG experiences out there, and MMOs are not it. Like they're not. They're not.
I feel that one of the flaws of writing an MMO is that MMOs get the writers that they have available to them, and those writers write cinematic single player RPG content. If
Yes.
I have to play another, attention, all MMO developers, I'm going to get on a soapbox
Oh my
right now.
God.
Enjoy my soapbox. If you fuckers make me stand in line to be the superhero of the realm, the unique and one guy that could save everything, and stand in a line for the 464 other players that have to turn in the same stupid quest, shut the fuck up. Just
Yeah.
quit
Final
your
Fantasy.
job. Go get a job at Ubisoft or something for a single player game experience, so you
Yeah.
can write all the content you want about your unique,
I believe
fluffy nutted single
I
player
believe
dude.
Alice is referring to Candlegate.
Yeah. Or Final Fantasy, where you're the fucking savior, you're the godsend, you're the echo, and then so is
Dark
the other
Age of
15,000
Camelot.
people.
Dark Age
Yeah.
of Camelot. You're in on the fact that the king is missing, and
Again, And I think
you
this
He's
is
the one assassin that has defeated everybody. And shut the fuck up. That is not content for an MMO. MMO
Wait,
content.
that was a story for Dark Age of Camelot right there?
Yeah.
Like, that's what the elves and Miz
Dark
got?
Age had a story.
That was the Albion.
Upstairs or dropped off in a camp and told, you know what, you're screwed. Go out into the world. You're going to get
Yeah.
screwed even more.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude. The Hibernia story
That's
was
just
way
a
different.
Hibernia story.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hibernia is so messed up. You end up, like, as your epic druid line quest, you end up killing the sea god's son in Irish mythology.
Right.
So as a natural person, I'm gonna go kill a god who is of nature's son. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So like Hibernia story was all messed up. I'm sad now that the elves and the mids got better stories.
Hey,
We were actually, like,
Albion
some kind of
actually
hero.
had
The
story.
elf was because the
got
Albion
gypped.
story was, Arthur was Merlin's missing and all this other stuff, and you're
Man, I missed out.
oh yeah, the Albion story was cool. If I was
Don't worry,
playing
we had
player.
Animist. Everything worked out.
Fuck you all.
Mushrooms.
Badger. All right.
Oh,
But
Mushrooms
yeah, I
make
mean,
it all worthwhile.
right content that is this. It is the. Again, like I related it to the heroin fix. Like Asheron's Call literally had a dev running around every couple of months. They would do a big patch every month. They would do story arcs over like 3-4 months, and these story arcs were like, there's a dude and he just this giant freaking thing. He's unkillable. He starts running through towns and murdering people, and everybody gathers together and they start fighting him, and to the point where the devs were tracking who the biggest and most powerful guilds on the server were, and the NPC would start calling out those guild leaders and be like, you claim you're the master of this realm or whatever like that. I will destroy you. Where are you? Stand before me and I will crush you. That stuff was cool. That was epic as crap. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they open a dungeon and you can crawl through it, and like there was no like mechanic for it per se, but it was like there was a heart beating at the end of this dungeon, and if you broke the shield to it, it ended the whole entire thing. But you had to be PvP flagged to be in the dungeon. And the role play behind the Asheron's Call's PvP system was you had to go pray at the altar of Belzeron, the great demon of war and destruction, and he would bless you with the evil curse of being PvP for 4 hours. So you had to go do this to get into these dungeons. Well, a lot of non-PvPers, there became this whole faction of PKs versus antis, and the antis were the PvPers who weren't PKers. They were, and the PKers were murder everything. They were the psychopath, crazy people, and it divided the PvP community naturally, organically, and to the point where the antis start blocking the entrance to the dungeon to not let the PvPers get in the dungeon, so they couldn't complete the dungeon and kill the heart and free Belzeron from his prison. And it was the greatest storyline ever, to the point where they ended the whole entire storyline. The one server that prevented the PKs from freeing Belzeron, They had 7 giant demons show up, and the guild holding the line held it for 7 hours, fighting an endless battle, rotating players in and all this other stuff as these waves of demons came in. And these 7 demons run by devs showed up, and they're like, "We will make a deal with you," and like to the point. They were like, "We're unkillable, we're blah blah," and so they turned around and they killed them because they actually forgot to turn on invincibility, and so they had to respawn the demons, come back out. Hey, we didn't mean that to happen, kind of, and then proceeded to get crushed by the indestructible demons. But they placed a pillar on every server with the names of every person that defended that freaking portal, because that is epic fucking content that is realm-wide super content that is designed for you to take part and get involved in or not to get involved in at your leisure. And those people are the actual true heroes and the true people who are the one chosen freaking people. They're all on a pillar still, as opposed to...
Sounds like a bunch of weebs to me.
Yeah, whatever. But the end result is that it's not a simple quest telling you you're the best, and that was awesome content. And I feel that is what is lost in the current MMO scheme.
I don't want to follow him up, so anybody else?
I can't. Yeah.
Sorry, I get epic sometimes.
Yeah. That's why we love you.
But does anybody else have any other points they want to drop in?
I don't know. I will follow up and say that one thing. One thing that's unique about that experience and what made that experience possible was there were game masters, whether they were staffed or not, and they did have the power to do that. And that is something we do not see in games today. We have that experience is whipped up. Game masters don't have the authority or the capability of bringing on those unique experiences of spawning an unkillable monster into the world to like defy this player run content that they just spun out of nothing, and that takes people on staff being actively involved with the community, and it takes them having the tools to do these things, but also having the interaction with the players to and being willing to take the game in the direction that the players want the game to go.
But I don't necessarily think that because Asheron's Call was a PvE game that it's necessary that you have DMs to do that content. You can spin that writing by saying that other faction, and they're in your way. And if you spin that writing so that it's epic, awesome things for your faction. It's something that when I worked on Warhammer, it was one of the things that I really wanted content-wise was, so once your guild's got a certain level, you got flags. You can run around. You planted them. They gave everybody in your guild a buff around you and all this other stuff. We used them in PvP. But the problem is if you died, they could steal your flag, right? And the flag was like, cool, but like I was like, this needs to be taken to an extra step. This needs to hang on a wall of a keep that you claim. When I claim a keep, I want to kill people and collect their flags and hang them on the walls of my keep. And that creates a story. Instead of just, oh, I defeated you, and oh, look, I stole your flag. Haha, you can't summon it for an hour. No, I don't care if you can summon it 5 minutes from now. It's just a flag at the end of the day. But I got to hang up a tattered battle flag you used against me on the walls of my keep. That makes story.
And people can steal it back, which is
right.
the idea behind that.
Right. Conquer my tower. Come get your flags, bitches.
Right. All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Yeah, we definitely gone over. We left anything unsaid?
Yeah, is there anything unsaid? Other than Malice just ranting at this point.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, if I had anything to close with, is ultimately, So if I have anything to close with, it's ultimately that I feel they're simply adding something like an in between that 5-man group and that 50-man raid.
Still
would
here.
be
Still chilling.
would be one of the greatest things they could do for dynamic group content. In my opinion.
Yep, I definitely agree, and that scope,
And stop doing
And-
guild caps. Nobody wants them.
or at least make them large. Make 300, 500, 1,000 players.
Thousands
I-
large.
Okay, so the big thing that I see and that I really hate is that they start doing this whole thing where some games are going by accounts and others are by characters, and then you go 500 character limit.
Ooh.
What? Nobody can have an alt in today's
Yeah,
games.
I want
mean,
accounts.
how many people do you know that don't have an alt?
Well,
I mean, Lord knows.
especially in a shitty game like ArcAge that has horrible control systems as far as like permissions. So I gotta have you in my guild so that I can restrict my buildings so that you can pick the flowers or whatever on my thing. But I want to use an alt to do it. I don't want to use
The
it. in my
only
main.
the only reason I would say character over account is if your game, your MMO is an extremely RP centric MMO where each character has their own backstory, their own relationships, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Aside from that, you want the person in your guild, not just the character, and that takes devs understanding there's a person at the keyboard.
Or let's actually write a character content so that you can actually hit a button and say, I'm a role player, or I'm not a role player. You hit that role player, or you go on a role play server and let them divvy that out. You're not on a role play server, or you don't hit that role play button, then I can just invite your whole account.
Yeah.
Flag
Yep.
it. Just flag it, and then we can move on. Because I assure you, my whole entire guild would hit the. Even if we wanted to roleplay, we'd all hit the not roleplay button just so that we could all freaking invite everybody and just get it done with, and go by account. But other than that, thank you all for having a great conversation on this topic. It was very enlightening. Very interesting. Thank you all in chat there.
Indeed.
For you guys have just been rattling off all day. Thanks for a lot of the comments, a lot of the questions, a lot of stuff you've been talking about over there. Also, we are archiving all of this now to our Patreon. So we would hope that everybody can come out and check out our Patreon. Check it out, and for a small fee, you get to see all of our archived videos and all that stuff. Have access to all of our content. We're also going to be doing a gift card. There's for everybody that subscribes to our Patreon. I believe it's January 19th. We're going to be doing a raffle. Everybody's going to have it. That's a Patreon. A subscriber is going to have a shot at that. So hopefully y'all can come on over, check out all our stuff, because we're kind of pulling it off of YouTube because of a lot of the shady things going on with YouTube right now. And I want to thank everybody for coming out. Any parting statements before we wrap this up?
I like turtles.
He likes turtles. I like turtles too.
Yeah, turtles.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I look forward to hopefully being on the show again sooner or later.
I was gonna say thanks, Fog, for coming out. Glad to have you. Great concept for a show as well. So if you have any other ideas, definitely come on the show. Or if you don't have any ideas, just come on the show, because we always need words of wisdom, and we always want new faces. So
Yep, sounds good. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
awesome.
Take care.
All right.
See you
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
Let's wrap it up.